Hey folks, Cool18 here, and welcome to another episode of our Unity 3D multiplayer first-person shooter tutorial. You may have noticed at the end of the last one we did get some errors here, and that's because of the way I deleted the player. You're not supposed to delete objects by deleting them out of the hierarchy or using the destroy call if they're a networked object. Instead, you want to use the photon network version of destroy just to make sure it gets cleaned up properly, and that's all it's whining about there, and we'll get that sorted out later on. So, problem number one that we currently have, the player spawns directly in the middle of the map, which happens to have no floor right there. So that's not good. Where do we want to spawn the player? Well, I mean, I could hardwire something in, but let's go and create a spawn spot setup right now, because it's very cool. So what do I mean by that? How these games work is there will be thingies. These are technical terms. There will be thingies scattered across the world. Let's I don't know, let's use a sphere. Now we'll use a cube, right? I'm gonna just drop a random cube in here. I'm gonna bring it up to sort of the zero-ish area. All right, so there's one cube. We're gonna make a spawn spot right in front of a front door. Good. Let's zero out the Z. There you go. Get it nicely centered this way. And I guess the floor here is at the 0 mark. Oh. First things first. These cubes, the built-in objects are always centered. Like, the origin of it is in the very middle of the object, which I find to be a pain in the butt. So let's create an empty instead. This is going to be an empty called spawn spot. I'll go ahead and actually center it up. I'm going to put the cube inside and then take the cube and center it inside of the object. And then I'm going to take this spawn spot, which is at the 0 point. I'm going to go ahead and drag it back over here. Z, you're supposed to be zeroed. Good. Now I can center over here, and I'm going to take this cube and move it upwards by half a unit. There we go. So now my spawn spot, the Y is at 0, but visually it looks like it's properly standing on the surface, which is what I like. Okay, so this represents visually one of the places a player can spawn. I'm going to take this cube, I'm going to get rid of the collider. And I'm going to leave like the mesh render on there for now, so that we can see things, but obviously we're going to want these to be invisible later on, so we're going to see what's involved in doing that going forward. But this is good. We've got a spawn spot, and this is actually, we're going to have in our levels here, we're going to create a new folder for, I don't know, I guess they'll be prefabs. This is level stuff, right? And our spawn spot is a prefab for our level. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna make a few more of these different little spawn spots. We're gonna duplicate one. We're gonna put one here. Duplicate one over here, and then I'm gonna take this whole set of these guys and put them over here, like so. And I don't know, for vague semblance of symmetry, I'll move this guy forward and. I don't know. They're not even, but that's okay. So we've got that, and you know what? Let's make it vaguely more interesting. We're gonna take this one. We're gonna duplicate it to over here. Let me go into wireframe mode so I can see. Not very well actually. All right, so it's one spot over there. Actually, can I go textured wires? Often handy. There we go. Slightly off the ground there, but that's fine. And that'll do. That'll do groovy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another empty just as a placeholder. And I'm going to call this invisible map stuff. I'm going to center this in the world just because I feel better with that. And here it actually makes a big difference. I'm going to take all these spawn spots, which are not technically invisible right now, but good enough. There. So they're all in there. I can select them and I was going to say see them all over, but I guess not. Did I? Oh, I didn't actually duplicate. Arg. I just moved them. Control D. There we go. My bad, guys. Sorry, this is taking a little longer than I meant. Let's go and stick those in front. And you know what? Let's not worry about symmetry anymore. There. Okay. Good enough. So now we've got spawn spots for both base. Now, technically, these spawn spots we're going to want to have them teamed up. In fact, let's go ahead. We're going to create a script here. We're actually going to call this a script called spawn spot. And the script is actually not going to have a whole lot going on inside of it. It could do something. We could have a team ID maybe. So public int team ID, have it default to 0, and really that's it. So then all of our spawn spots on one side of the map missing? So I should manually select here, 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 and here. These can be the team 1 spawn spots, right? And then when the player joins, the player can get assigned to a team and then just use the spawn spots for that team. And that's great. So, all right, we got that. Now, what is this all going to mean? In our network manager, when we spawn the player, and again, we're going to do things the easy way, and then we can optimize things later on. When we spawn the player, we want to spawn him on a spawn spot. So, how do we do that? There's a few different ways, but what we want to do, game object dot find game objects of type, and then we can I can't remember, of type spawn spot. So this will return an array of spawn spot like this. I got a 50-50 if that's the exact right way to spell it. Good. Hey. Excellent. Okay, so we actually get an array of all of our spawn spots. Now this type of call is not considered to be very fast because the game basically has to scan, to a certain extent, all the objects and find the ones that fit. You don't want to do this every frame. Ideally, you do it only once when the level loads. That's a fine way of doing it. The other thing you can do is you could have some sort of spawn spot manager that all the spawn spots register themselves with and blah, blah, blah. You know what? This is fine. It's fine. Again, we'd probably want to do something like put this in the start. And we're going to call this spawn spots. This is better. I'm going to take this. We're actually going to make this a member variable. We're going to initialize it at the start of the game. And then we only have to do that once. Great. And then whenever a player is instantiated, what we want to do is grab a random spawn spot. Spawn spot, my spawn spot is equal to. So I've got all the spawn spots. I want to grab one of them at random. So spawn spot dot length. So we want to do a random dot range from 0 to the spawn spot length. Right? So if we've got 10 spawn spots, like we do now, this will be, it's 0, 10, but random dot range when you're using integers, it's from this number to this number minus 1. So it'll generate 0 to 9, which is right because when we've got an array of 10 objects, it goes from 0 to 9, so that works out great. Technically, what we should do here is probably do something like if spawn spots equals null, then debug.log error WTF, and then just return. You know, good programming. That's exactly the sort of debug messages you want. If we have no actual spawn spots in the level, freak the hell out, which is what's going to happen here. We know our level's fine because I put them in there, but you know, just as an aside. Okay, so we'll grab a random spawn spot, and then what we're going to do is we're going to spawn the player at that spot. Transform.position, and we're also going to use the rotation of the spawn spot. So transform.rotation, because what we can do with our spots here is make sure they're facing the right way. If I go to I'm going to tell the facing. Right, they'll spawn facing this blue arrow, the Z-axis. So there we go. So if I rotate these guys 90, that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to grab the others as well. And this one, we're going to rotate them 90. So they're going to start off facing towards the right. And then my other guys over here, and you don't have to be on local or global. I just went to local so I could see that arrow. We're going to rotate them minus 90 on the Y, so they will start off facing towards the left. Good. So when we spawn any of those spots, we will spawn there. And all right, that's better. Now, and we're not doing team identification at this point, so we're not filtering based on what spawn spots are there. We're just grabbing any spawn spot right now, and that's okay. So if I join now, it's going to pop me down on one of the spots, but why did I start to fall? Well, probably, and this is something that's very, very common. I've gotten a lot of things before. Yeah, it's happening everywhere. The reason is that when you appear, oh, yeah, that's exactly the reason. Because the people who created the first-person controller prefab object did not do the thing that I always do. If I drop this in a world, right, and I put this, the Y is at 0, you'll notice this player controller is not actually standing on the ground. They have the center point of this player controller in the center of the origin of this object. The base of this object is in the center of the object. So when we're spawning somewhere on this box over here like this, we're spawning halfway into the floor, so we just keep falling because our feet aren't on the floor. So it deals with that by just making us fall at that point, which is correct. And so I hate the fact that you have to be above the ground. You have to be 1 unit above the ground to not be interpenetrating it. It's awful. Who does that? So the way I'm going to fix that, very simply, I'm going to set this to 0. Our character controller here, the center of it, I'm just going to make it 1 unit up. And there's also the model, right, the graphics of the object. So now everything will work. If I actually start the game, everything will work fine. We won't fall into the ground right now. It just will look silly because the visuals of our character is still sticking into the ground. I'm actually going to do, I tend to do, just put in like an extra little amount in there just to avoid any sort of weird roundness errors or whatever. We're going to start slightly even higher. Even when we're at 0, we're going to be slightly above the ground. That's our collision box. And then, yeah, just take our graphics and do the same thing, 1.001, like that. Nope, that's rotation. That's not what we want. Position. There, we've got it. So now our collision thing is above the ground even when we're at 0, and it looks right. The camera actually needs to be bumped up by 1 as well, just so that it still looks like it's coming out of eye level. Great, we're going to apply all of these changes to our prefab. Let me delete this, save this, and hit play, and now we should spawn with our feet on the ground. Woo! There we are. Yeah, there's our little spawn spot, which again should be invisible, but we can pass through it right now. It makes no difference whatsoever. Fall to the ground, great. Let's do it a few more times. Oh, spawn way up high again. There we go, on the ground. And you can tell we're facing the right way. We're facing, the enemy right away. We're always spawning on one side. We're seeing the shadowed one. And again, come on. Give me one that's on the opposite side of the map. There we go. So now we're seeing the one that has the bright face. And groovy. So, spawn spots work great. Not team-based right now, but we haven't done any team-based stuff yet, so that's totally groovy. We're going to go and take our, level prefabs. And our cube here, we're just going to turn off the mesh renderer so that the cube is invisible. Ideally, what I want to do is actually not have this cube model at all. Instead, I want to use like gizmo drawing and things to make life better. But for now, it's okay. We've turned off the renderer on the spawn spots, so they won't be visible anymore, but everything will keep working exactly the way it was, right? Spawn spots should be invisible. So, good. Excellent. Fantastic. So why am I still thinking that there's a huge, massive problem? We're going to find out. So let's go ahead and build and run. So I'm going to build the Windows version of my software one more time. And again, things turn blue because of the procedurally generated substances. They look blue until they sort of like re-render their graphics. All right, so we've joined here. Everything is groovy. I'm going to move to the middle of the map over here. Good. Now I'm going to flip over here. I'm going to start a second instance. We're going to join the same game, and something horrible will happen. Okay, well this looks fine. All right, we're still looking okay, right? We've got one guy over here and one guy over here. Now, oh, am I wrong about that? Oh, I'm not wrong. You'll notice a few things. First of all, our characters don't match up. Where's the guy on the bridge? There's a guy way over there, right? Way over there in the distance. And there's me standing up here. Where's the dude that's on the bridge? And actually, why aren't I on the bridge anymore? What's going on? What kind of weirdness is this? And that's not the only weirdness that's going on. If I flip back over here, watch the guy way off in the distance. Actually, let's maximize. Watch the guy way off in the distance. I'm going to jump. See how he jumps too? And if I move to the side, and I move to the side, in fact, I'm hitting a wall here, but if I keep hitting the left key to keep strafing, that other guy's going to keep moving until he falls off the world. There's something going wrong. There's actually more than one thing going wrong right now. So let's deal with a few of them. First of all, even though we are successfully spawning the character, if I went and like started 15 copies of the game, I would have 15 people in the world. However, where they are standing in one world does not match where they're standing in another world. Why is that? The reason is that our player, even though we have this photon view, we're not actually synchronizing anything. This is the basic thing you need so that the network can keep track of an object. This means when we connect up, and you'll see this down here, we connect up, we're going to spawn that player, I'm going to grab the player. You can see the photon view for this player has an ID. This is how it keeps track of itself in the game world. And if I connect with a second player, that second player will have ID 1002, for example. But this component is what's actually synchronized. All this does by itself right now is keep track of the fact that the object exists. What it wants is it needs a component to actually send back and forth over the network and keep synchronized. We're going to start off by just grabbing this transform component and dropping that in here. So now you're going to see it's going to serialize both the position and the rotation of the object. It's going to maintain that across the network. So let's go and build and run now. And there's still going to be one huge, massive problem. But the creatures, the players will be in the same place in the game world at this point. Unless I've forgotten something else, but I don't think I have. So again, I'm going to take this one guy. I'm going to move him to the middle of the map. Right over here. So now when I start my second instance, I should spawn in, I should see a player standing on the bridge. Yes, well I do. The problem is, well, now there's some other weirdness going on here. It looks like I'm on the bridge, and then there's someone else standing over here. In this instance here, it looks like I'm not on the bridge for some reason. Why is that? The problem is both these players have a camera. So if I open up the player object here, you can see they both have a camera going on, which is not right. That's like, what? No, we can't have more than one camera. It's the same problem as before, right? And in fact, what I could do is I could take one of these cameras and cut the height in half, and now all of a sudden we've got a nice split screen view. Now there's still weirdness going on in that we're still moving both objects. So let's back up. We've illustrated a major problem here in that we are spawning two players in the world, but both player objects have all the same details. They both have a camera. They both, and you could tell by the fact that when I moved my mouse, both players were turning and mouse looking around. Both players in the world have a mouse look script on them. They also both have a FPS input controller script on them, which means if I have two players in the game and I'm on one computer and I hit move forward, both people will move forward. You could see that by the fact that I had the guy like suicide off the cliff before. That's not what we want. When we spawn a player in the world, only our player that we own on our computer should have A, a camera, B, a mouse look script, C, a FPS input controller, which is what deals with the WASD keys, right? These three things should only exist on the player that we personally control. Every other player in the world, those scripts shouldn't be active on. Instead, this photon view should be responsible for making sure that their position is accurate on my screen. So, if you're in a 20-player game, on your particular client, 19 of them will not have a mouse look, will not have an FPS controller, will not have a camera. Only one of them will. I know I've repeated this like multiple times, but in the past with the FPS stuff tutorials that I've done, this has been a huge point of confusion for people. Big gotcha. So, what's the best way of dealing with it? Well, there's a few different ways I can think of. Many different ways. I think potentially the easiest thing to do is going to be to, in our prefab here, let's disable things. Let's disable the camera in the prefab. Let's disable the FPS input controller and the mouse look. Because, again, if we have a 20-player game, 19 of them, we're not going to want to have this stuff. I could take off the component, but just disabling it will also do the trick. So now if I connect up, well, we're going to get a blank screen because, remember, once I join the server, the standby camera gets disabled. And right now, the player's camera is disabled. And also, even if I find them in the world over here and I click back into my game, it's not responding to input. And that's because my mouse look script and FPS controller are disabled. If I re-enable mouse look and FPS controller, now all of a sudden I can move again, which is great. And if I re-enable the camera, now I can see myself and move and everything is working great. So, I like this. This is the way we want to operate. So back over here in our network manager, we spawn our player, right? Right here is where we spawn a player. Now, this function This is spawn my player. This call here will spawn the player on everyone's screen, but it also returns a game object. This is the my player game object is here, and I think we have to cast it like that. All right, so we get a game object here. Well, this is my player, and I can do stuff to this guy. For example, my player dot get component. So what component do we want to get? Come on. We want to get the component called FPS input controller. There we go. I was going to say, there shouldn't be a red underline. This should work fine. We're going to get this component, and then we're going to enable it. Yes? No? Why isn't it auto-completing anymore? Have I made a script error? Is this some silly thing because this is a JavaScript script or some nonsense? If that's the case, because it's we can also put in a string name here. Let's try this. Input controller. There might be something bizarre going on there. Okay, it's a controller. This is a mono behavior. Wow, this is actually way more complicated than it should be. Dot enabled equals true. Let me move forward with this and see if this does it or if I've confused myself with something. We also want to get the mouse look component. I feel like there's something else I'm sort of goofing up here, but I'm not sure. I think it's because it's a JavaScript. And it's JavaScript that's like, this is the worst example of Unity JavaScript in that it's JavaScript that's not even properly wrapped in a class, because we could do class FPS input controller, you know, even in JavaScript, and then what do we do to extend it? Something like this? I don't know, something like that. And this is, just use C#, man. Just use C#. Okay, we're gonna enable both those controllers. Let's go and find out if that works. The camera still won't be present. We're gonna see if this, so where's the player? Player is here. So yeah, I can move around. Good. So we're properly enabling the mouse look and the character, or the FPS input controller, on the character that we ourselves and only ourselves own. If we go ahead and start the game where we have multiple clients connected, each client will only control their own. There's still the problem that our camera's not enabled, but we can fix that really easily. And the way we're going to do that, because we have a camera inside a player called main camera, so that's fine. So in my player game object, I'm going to go into transforms. We're going to find find on this, do everything. I guess we want to find child called main camera dot, what is this returning? Oh, it's returning a transform. Dot game object dot set active to true. All right, there's a lot of stuff there. I'll go back and re-explain that script here in 2 seconds. We're going to connect up. There we go. Now everything is back to working the way that it is. So let's review these lines real quick here. So these are the new lines. Basically, once we create our object, the player object this is the proper version of it for the network. But for our personal version of the object, we want to make sure that we can control it with the keyboard, control it with the mouse, and that the camera that is a member of it is actually turned on. So I'm sure that I'm sort of doing this bit a little bit more awkward than is need be, but it'll work, so there it is. Well, maybe we'll figure out a way to optimize it later. Let's go ahead and do the test with build and run, and we'll launch 2 copies and see, again, if our test is working the way that we want it. So we're going to hit play here. Gotta wait for that free Unity cutscene to go. We've connected the server. Ooh, way up here. Let me go and fling myself off and go and position myself onto the bridge once more. Boing, boingy, boingy. There we are. And then over here, we're going to connect. Look, I can see another dude over there. And if I move, the other dude is not moving. Let's flip back to my other window. Oh, there's that other guy. And I can go there. And in fact, if I move the screen, you can see the one guy at the top of the bridge. Right? That's me. I can hop up and down. I can walk forward. Hello. Can we bump into each other? Yeah, there we are. Bounce around a little bit. Excellent. Beautiful. Everything is now working the way it should. You'll notice the movement is pretty jittery on the other screen. You see that? How? Let's maximize this so we get a slightly better view. Position ourselves so we can sort of see the top. There we are. And jump up here. Do you see? It's like, why? What's with that shakiness? Well, that is, I think that's what we're going to deal with next time. We're actually doing pretty goddamn good so far. All right, see you next time, folks. Bye-bye.